Morning, good afternoon. Today we're going to take a look at SAP Business One Fixed Assets module. And we're going to look at what fixed assets can do and does right out of the box. All right, so a little bit about my environment. I'm running on a HANA deployment, a Business One, but the fixed assets module is agnostic to database. So when we talk about fixed assets, you can use the HANA deployment, SQL deployment. What you see today, it's all going to be the same, no matter how your Business One's deployed, cloud, on-premise. Uh, it's really agnostic to all of that. So what we're going to focus on today is fixed assets out of the box inside a Business One. Now I'm running 10.0 SAP. Fixed assets became a standard module in Business One at the 9.1 release. As of 9.1, fixed assets is now a formal included module. And it's really up to you whether you want to turn it on or not. Now, fixed assets was delivered prior to 9.1, but it was delivered as an add-on. And so it's been around for a while in SAP, but now it is a standard module and very easy to set up. And in fact, that's probably where we'll start here. I'll first just talk about, I'm in my finance cockpit here. I'm using the B1 or the BOEM B1 usability cockpit feature. So if you have B1 usability and your screen looks very different than mine, keep in mind that right now you'll have the functionality to add multiple pages of analytics directly into your Business One environment. So I'm starting here at my fixed assets cockpit where I can identify all of my fixed assets and get a feel for what's the planned depreciation, what's my actual depreciation, is this asset near end of life? Do I want to, throw it on eBay and sell it, and that kind of thing. So setting up fixed assets, very, very straightforward. If we go into setup, financials, the only thing you really need to do, well, the first thing, of course, is you need to have your fixed asset chart of accounts set up, and I'll show you those in a minute. But if you're using the standard out-of-box GL account structure with Business One, those accounts will already be set up. So let's go into how do we set up fixed assets to begin with. Well, the first thing is there's this feature called account determination. And this controls what GL accounts get used during the life cycle of that asset. And you could have different GL account settings for different types of assets. So as an example, I have assets that are office equipment, my copiers, my fax machines, those kinds of things, computers. And these are the GL accounts I want those assets to use. And if I scroll over a little bit, I've got some company vehicles. I want those to use a different set of GL accounts. And then I have some manufacturing equipment, which again could use a whole nother set of GL accounts for capturing of your asset data. Now, these accounts could also be the same across the board, right? Because maybe you don't want to differentiate between my office depreciation versus shop floor depreciation or motor vehicles. You can lump them all into single accounts as well. So it gives you that flexibility. And this is probably, I'd say, the hardest part of setup. It's just a little bit of time consuming. If you don't have the GL accounts, you can create them pretty quickly, but it does take a little bit of time, but not a whole lot. So anyways, then we set up our depreciation types, and we'll just take a look at those. So Business One comes with a number of different depreciation types out of the box. You've got things like straight line period control, declining balance. You've got multi-level, single level, depreciation schedules. And then, of course, you have the ability to create your own manual depreciation schedules. So if you want to depreciate your assets using a methodology that's not on this list, you'll be able to go into manual depreciation or be able to, basically manual depreciation and define your own calculation here. So very flexible. Most commonly, the default methods work for you right out of the box. And then most often, assets, of course, they're pretty much done on a calendar basis. So this is saying how often do you want to depreciate, monthly or yearly, are our two options there. So right here, I'm using a straight line. And then if I go to the calculation, let's see, pool depreciation type. No, there isn't anything there. This has to do with reporting. So you can create a pool of different depreciation types for different types of reporting. And that's pretty much it. Now, let's go ahead and I'm going to cancel out of here. So that's the account depreciation types. And then we have depreciation areas that you get set up. And again, this is for reporting. You can report off of, your different depreciation areas, internal, gap, office supplies. This gives you the ability to create different depreciation models. Now, one of those depreciation models needs to be gap. So one of your models does need to post to general ledger. And you'll see how this all comes to play here in a minute. But what's neat about this is that you can set up different depreciation areas or schedules, different depreciation books, if you will, one for reporting, and then that one could be different than what gets booked into general ledger. And you'll see that here shortly. Then we create our asset classes. The asset classes, we'll go ahead and bring one up here. So for my motor vehicles, now you can see for my motor vehicles, the two different depreciation areas that I'm using. So gap, of course, this is what gets booked to general ledger, and this is using a straight line of 72 months. And then I've got an internal depreciation schedule, but this doesn't get booked to general ledger. All right, this isn't my gap. This is just for reporting. So there's no limit. You can have as many depreciation schedules as you want. And that's pretty much it. All there is to set up. The attribute groups, these are user-defined fields. And this is where you can add additional attributes into your asset, and then you can relabel these descriptions. So in a sense, this is like properties that you would see on your item master and your business partner. These are those user-defined properties. And of course, you get 64 of these, just like you do with your inventory and your business partners. So again, these are quick little check boxes that allow you to, from a reporting perspective, to draw different types of reports on your fixed assets. And that's pretty much of the setup. Again, it sets up very quickly and easily. There's not a whole lot to do. Like I said, I think the biggest thing is just making sure you've got the right GL accounts to use for your different types of assets you're going to be depreciating. Now, let's go into fixed assets. So let me start out here. Let's take a look at an asset that hasn't been capitalized yet. I am in the process of purchasing an autoclave for my shop floor. And so what I did here is I set up the initial asset. You'll notice there's no capitalization. This asset hasn't been capitalized yet. This is just part of my purchase request. Well, again, here in purchasing, we've got the ability to submit a purchase request. So part of my process in creating a new asset was I entered a purchase request, went into my accounting department. They approved it. They went out, my buyers went out, found me an autoclave. I have actually received my autoclave. I'll bring up the goods receipt PO here. And now we're ready to capitalize this asset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this to an AP invoice. That's what will automatically capitalize my asset. Now, keep in mind, I could also manually capitalize my asset. You don't need to go through a procurement process. But fixed assets is fully integrated with the procurement module in SAP. So originally we thought it was going to be about $18,000. We find out it's $19,500. So we're going to adjust the AP appropriately, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my AP invoice here. Now, by adding that AP invoice, we have now just capitalized our fixed asset. I'm going to hit the refresh button. There you go. Now you can see there's a capitalization date. Here's the acquisition product cost, my net book value, my historical net book value, and then it even calculated what my ordinary depreciation is going to be on a monthly basis. So if we go to the depreciation tab, you'll notice that, well, I haven't received any depreciation yet. So what we want to do is let's go back into fixed assets. And let's take a look at how do we do the depreciation. So just to recap, I added an asset. I got the approval to buy it. We received it. And I just did a three-way match on the AP invoice for that autoclave. And that AP invoice automatically capitalized my asset. At this point, there really isn't anything else I need to do. But at the end of the fiscal period, or doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be at the end of the fiscal period, but at some point, you're going to want to depreciate that asset. And you can depreciate that manually. So if I go into manual depreciation, I could put my autoclave in here and actually book my depreciation manually if I choose to do that. But I like using a depreciation run. And so here's the fiscal period my assets are going to book into because we are in the month of May. And you notice that your assets, you typically depreciate those once a calendar period. And so this will book all of my assets, and I can book these ahead of time and get it out of the way. So at the end of the month, I don't need to run a depreciation run. Now, when I click preview, this shows me all of my assets that have not yet been depreciated this month. And here's the new autoclave that we had created just a few minutes ago. So let's go ahead and let's execute our fixed asset depreciation run. And it's done. And that's it. So what you've seen here in literally 5 minutes is the ability to add a new asset, the ability to procure that asset, and then match your AP invoice to your PO, goods receipt, if you did a goods receipt. And that automatically capitalized my asset. And we've now just booked the depreciation. So that's pretty much a day in the life of fixed assets. Now we're going to look at a few other things, but I can come back into my depreciation run, click preview, and now you can see I don't have any new assets yet to depreciate for this fiscal period. But let's say tomorrow I add a new asset, or next week I add a couple of more assets. When I go to click a preview, then just those new assets will show up and allow me again to book those new assets into the same fiscal period. Now, if let's go back here. If we go drill down into our depreciation run, let's do that. Here's the one that we just did a minute ago. If we drill down into that, then what happens is this creates a journal entry. So if we go back into finance and we bring up our last journal entry, what we're going to see here is my depreciation. And there's the depreciation calculation. And I'll probably have several different depreciations here. You see different journal entries for all my different assets there. So that's a day in life of fixed assets. Now let's go look at fixed assets in a little more detail, some of the other capabilities that you have. Let's go back into our asset master data and let's bring up our autoclave. So we'll bring that up real quick and we'll go back to the assets tab here. And we've seen this screen. We've seen how it capitalized automatically. But if we merge over here into the depreciation, now you can see this fiscal period's depreciation and what exactly was booked to general ledger. Because we just added this asset this month, again, there's no prior period capitalizations at all or depreciations. And then you see my planned depreciation or my depreciation forecast and what that total is. And you're able to do some projected reporting of those fixed assets depreciation. So in the fixed assets module, we've been into the asset master data. We capitalized it through the procurement module, but again, we can manually capitalize our asset. Especially, you may have existing assets that you've already got capitalized, and maybe you're tracking those in Excel. In that case, you won't be using an AP invoice to capitalize your asset. You'll be going into capitalization here, listing your fixed assets, and then capitalizing those appropriately. All right. You can also adjust your capitalization through credit memos. You can retire your assets. You can transfer your assets. We talked about the ability to do both manual depreciation as well as automated depreciation. You can revalue your assets. So if you've got an asset that's based on, let's say, a pretty fluctuating commodity, that goes through price changes quite often, it might make sense to come in and revalue an asset. And so I'm able to simply key in the asset that I want to revalue, and we'll go ahead and show you this here. And then, what percentage do I want to revalue? And I can calculate a new book value, and this will create an adjusting journal entry as well. So that's there. Now, there will come a point when 2024 ends and 2025 begins. And so in that scenario, to do a year-end process for fixed assets, you click execute. Very low maintenance module, super easy to manage. And then you have your asset depreciation or your asset reports. You've got an asset depreciation forecast report. And so from here, I can specify an asset or a range of assets, a balance sheet account, what depreciation area do I want to display, and then out from what date range. So if I go out here to the end of this year, and then I have some summary options. One of the cool things about the fixed assets module, in fact, let's take a little side trip here. Let's go back into our asset master data and let's bring up our autoclave, because you have different reporting options. You've got the standard asset reports, but one of the cool things about the fixed asset module is the cost accounting integration. And so you have the ability to tie your asset to various projects. And these are financial projects. And as you know, you can tag, any document in SAP to a project, and you can run P&Ls by project. So this gives you the ability to tie certain assets to various projects, as well as different distribution rules. In a distribution rule, this ties into the cost accounting module in SAP. So I'll just touch on this briefly here. But from a cost accounting perspective, you have the ability to create these different dimensions and then unlimited cost centers underneath these dimensions. So I might have a cost center called, shop floor, and as an example, and then I might have cost centers for each one of my assets in shop floor. And what this will give me the ability to do is it'll give me the ability here, I made that change, let me bring this back up, is to attach a cost center to this asset or attach multiple cost centers to this asset. So I still get the standard general ledger reporting on my fixed assets. Nothing changes there, but I now have the ability within my cost accounting module to get very creative in my reporting, distribution reports, cost center reports. How much did this asset cost me? What's my depreciation, my net book value, those kinds of things. You can get very creative with your reporting by leveraging the cost accounting module in addition to fixed assets. So I did want to mention that. And then we talk about these user-defined attributes. Again, you're able to add as many different user-defined fields or attributes to the assets that you want, and use these for whatever purposes you want. They're both alphanumeric as well as numeric. And then you can also add in other types like dates and those times and those kinds of things if you need them. Of course, off to the right are all of my user-defined fields that I've added over time to my item master. So anytime you add a user-defined field in your item master, that field will also be available on the fixed asset form. So there we go. That's a quick look at fixed assets. Again, I think the cost accounting side of that is really, really powerful. And be able to summarize, by project or by cost center, all your different assets. But here's an example of a real simple, asset projection report. Will show me for each one of my assets for each fiscal period, what that depreciation is. And again, more details on here if I slide over to the right. Like all the other reports in SAP, you get to pick and choose what fields are important to you. So this report could look different for different types of companies and users. And that was just one report there. Oops, I didn't mean to run that again. Let's go ahead and cancel that. So that's an example of the, one of the fixed asset reports will come down here, and you've also got an asset history sheet. This will give you a full historical view of that asset status reports, asset transaction reports, that deals with, did we retire this asset? Did we transfer that asset? So those are your 4 basic reports that you get out of the box. And then keep in mind that through the ad hoc report writers, through Crystal Reports, through the query generator, through the down here, through the extended analytics, if you have a HANA deployment, you can leverage the Excel report writer, extended analytics, and also easily create additional reports within the fixed assets module. What I like to do is in my cockpit here, I've created a cockpit for fixed assets. So if I want to take a look, let me go ahead and refresh my cockpit here real quick. But if I want to take a look and say something like, what's my depreciation this year versus last year? Do I have anything planned for next year, this quarter versus last quarter, and so forth? I've got different filters that will allow me to real quickly pinpoint some details about my assets. I can filter here by year. So if I want to look at 2024, there it is. And then I can further, further filter by asset. And now I'm looking at my autoclave. This is all real-time data. So there's a depreciation we booked, the $271 we just booked a minute ago. And this shows the remaining net book value of my asset or my planned depreciation through the course of life of this asset. So hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of fixed assets. It is very easy to set up. The last thing I'll mention is in the administration module under data import, there is a specific import template set up for importing your fixed assets. So if you've been tracking your fixed assets in Excel or a third-party product, it's, we can avoid a lot of data entry by being able to import your fixed assets and import all the fixed asset details, the depreciation and everything else can be imported to avoid having to do a lot of data entry in the initial setup and implementation of the fixed assets module. So that's a high-level overview of fixed assets. If you have questions, I would encourage you, please reach out to Vision 33. We'd love to talk to you more about fixed assets and to make sure that we have all of those things that you need from a fixed assets perspective. Thanks for watching.